Good evening, listeners, and welcome to another Scoreboard on a Wednesday. My name is Christopher Zidane Matthews, and we have a lot of things to discuss. We will be having a chat with Mr. Alexander Williams. He's the chairman of JADCO, and you know what is going on with a top cricketer, a West Indies opener, John Campbell, was banned for 4 years, not 2, 4 years, by an independent panel. JADCO decided that he has to face that panel. He had to face that panel, and they issued a 4-year ban on him. We will have a chat with Mr. Alexander Williams to discuss that. At 5:30, we will talk some swimming. A top swimmer will be joining us. And then at 5:45, we will have a chat with Mr. Carl Redwood. He is the big marketing guru, and he's what is wrong with you, Nicholas? Yes, Carl Redwood is the marketing person responsible for promoting and telling people about Verticast and what they're about. And, you know, the World Cup means a lot to Jamaica sporting people. And our job here is to get information out there as related to sports for the regular man in the streets. And that's what we do. So we'll have a chat with Colorado as it relates to the World Cup, where it will be, because they have the rights, and also the English Premier League, and how it will be accessible for regular people to get to see it. So all of that in the program this evening. But we'll have to say good evening to Mr. Alexander Williams. How are you this evening, sir?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you, sir. How are you?
Yeah, man, not bad. Thanks for joining us. Hello?
Hello? Yes, man. Yes, man.
Yeah, man. Good. All right.
Good evening to you and your listeners, sir.
Yeah, man. Wonderful. Let's get right to it. First of all, somebody asked a question earlier on today, and let me answer that question first before we get into the meat of the matter. What exactly is the responsibility of JADCO?
The responsibility of JADCO. All right. That's so like as if you had 3 hours for your program for me to answer that question. But JADCO's responsibility is to conduct Jamaica's anti-doping program in Jamaica in accordance with WADA guidelines. That's broadly what JADCO's responsibility is. So it includes not just the testing of athletes, it also includes education, and it also includes investigation for prohibited substances and so on. So that is broadly our remit.
Yes.
And so in accordance with WADA guidelines, we are required and mandated to pursue anti-doping rule violations where we see they arise in accordance with WADA guidelines.
Yeah. Do you think JADCO has done a good job of educating top athletes as to what they need to do to prevent themselves from getting into trouble with JADCO?
You know, that's a very good question. Frankly, from where I sit, my answer is yes. I mean, we have been educating on all platforms continuously throughout the year, making contact with just about all athletes that we have to test in regards to education. So much so that, and I don't mind telling you this, last year, WADA, for the first time, created an international standard for education that all national anti-doping organizations were supposed to comply with.
Yes.
And it turns out that we, JADCO, was doing more than what the new international standard for education was doing. When I attend, say for instance, the Institute of National Anti-Doping Organizations, a worldwide organization of NADOs, we are actually helping to train other NADOs as told to go about education.
Yes.
And I'll go further to say that I received commendation when I attended a recent education conference. And I was taken aback when they saw what you were doing here in Jamaica. They said, well, congratulations, JADCO. I mean, you're on every media platform. You have your radio thing, you have your TV thing, you're on the side of boards. You have everybody, every athlete email address on WhatsApp, can WhatsApp them. You have seminars continuously throughout the year for senior and junior athletes, and they were impressed.
Yes.
So I have to say, certainly from JADCO's standpoint, I don't know where else to turn in getting the message out.
So you're saying it is unacceptable for a top athlete, whether it's cricket, netball, football, track and field, to not be aware of the rules?
Yes, sir. I'm actually saying, and I'm really at that point, which see, this recent decision has saddened me. You know, it really has saddened me. I said, boy, after all of this,
Yes.
how could an athlete, especially at international level athlete, take this position?
Mm-hmm. All right. That's where we're going right now. So on the day in question, what was reported to you, the chairman of JADCO, as to what happened when the testers went to the home of Mr. John Campbell?
Well, from what I gather, the personnel arrived at the athlete's home shortly before 6 a.m. Right? All in all, it seems as if it was shortly before 6 a.m. And the listeners, and perhaps you know, that every athlete, certainly who appear in the registered testing pool, is that you must do whereabouts filings. In other words, you file with JADCO your available times for testing.
Yes.
Now, when you file where it is said in adults, which is the system that we have, and we educate all athletes to say the whereabouts filings mean that if we go to test you during those periods and you're not there, is a mistest.
Yes.
Okay? It does not mean that JADCO cannot test you outside that time. As a matter of fact, that's the whole basis of testing worldwide. Random testing at any time.
Yes.
Okay? So we say that to athletes all the time.
And JADCO has made that clear to the top athletes right across Jamaica.
That is so.
Good.
And from what I understand, this was said to the athlete on this particular occasion. And
were the testers sure that John Campbell was aware of who they were or who they are?
Yes, they were. They identified themselves. Now, from what I understand, they may not have been afforded the opportunity to actually present the credentials.
Why was
This
that?
is what I understand. Because it's behind a closed door, what have you distance, and did not engage them up front. All right?
So they were talking to each other behind the doors?
So I gather.
Yes.
So I gather.
So what was reported to be said by the test?
That I'm a doping control officer, this is a chaperone, blah, blah, blah. We're here from Juggernaut, and we are here to test you. Now, from what I see, his response was, this is not the time that I find in the whereabouts for testing. The response of the DCO was, notwithstanding, if you are here, we can test you. All right, where you're here. And this is the key thing. Now, let me give you the key thing.
Yeah, yes.
His response, and I'm seeing his witness statement, was, what if I am not here?
What I mean by his witness statement?
Well, he would give a statement to the independent anti-doping disciplinary panel during the course of the year.
So he made that statement?
Yeah, he said to the DCO, what if I am not here? And the DCO responded, well, if you're not here, then nothing would be wrong. You're not here.
And then what was his response to that?
Then I am not here.
Oh, Lord. All right. At the hearing, did he admit it to saying that at the hearing?
So I gather. His explanation was that he was disoriented. Okay?
Oh.
And apparently he presented some medical evidence to try and prove that he was disoriented. But the panel, on the balance of all the evidence, were not comfortably satisfied that he was disoriented.
How long did the exchange last for? Was that reported to you by the officers?
I don't know how long the exchange lasts for. What I know, what I gather, is that they waited for some time afterwards. I think they said about an hour after this took place to see if we'd come out or what have you.
Oh.
And
this is something else being added in now because this is not being reported. So having had that exchange with Mr. John Campbell, they still waited for an hour to see if he would eventually come out.
Something like that, yes.
And he never presented himself.
That is what I understand.
Interesting.
But the interaction, from what I gather, took place just minutes before 6 a.m.
What was the hour given for the automatic testing?
I think the whereabouts findings Well, from what I gather, the athlete is saying is that he had changed his whereabouts filing to the afternoon instead of the morning.
Yeah. Initially, it was slated for the morning.
Yes, initially his whereabouts filing goes to the morning, but apparently had changed it sometime afterwards to the afternoon.
Okay. The reason why I asked you the first question when I got to John Campbell is about the education of the athlete is because that's the argument being put forward that he wasn't aware that they could test him. That's his argument, that he wasn't aware that they could test him outside of the designated hour that you agreed to. And you're saying an athlete of John Campbell magnitude ought to know that the rules allow for testing 1 cc. That's what you're basically saying to me.
Well, the next thing is, from what I gather, and he seems to confirm it, he was told this by this individual at his door who said he was from JADCO. Okay? So, it seems
So hold on. So even if he was not aware before, the JADCO individual told John Campbell that the rules allowed him to come outside of the window given.
That is so. So it would appear as if he took a gamble.
Hold the line, Mr. Alexander Williams, chairman of JADCO. We have a break. We'll take the break. We're coming back. All right, welcome back to the scoreboard, and we are having a chat with Mr. Alexander Williams, chairman of JADCO. We're discussing the issue as it relates to Mr. John Campbell, who was banned for 4 years for refusing to do a drug test. That is exactly the rule that was broken by John Campbell, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct?
Yes, that is so. Let's see if I can find it. It's Article or Rule 2. I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but yes. In substance, yes.
All right. So we leave now from Mr. John Campbell refusing to have the test. What was the next steps now from JADCO standpoint? What do they do after that, and what happened?
Well, we wrote to, as I understand it, we wrote to Mr. Campbell, and I think it was by way of an email to say that you've committed an anti-doping rule violation and you need to provide us an explanation, feeling we should go before the IADP.
Mm-hmm.
I understand there may have been some delay in his response. I think there was some evidence that he didn't get that letter in his inbox, but then he checked his spam and found it, and then responded thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but as I said to you, how do I put it? The justification or excuse did not find favor to avoid going forward.
And then JADCO decided that he has to face a disciplinary committee.
Yes.
Tell the listeners, how do you come about deciding, or is it JADCO, or who's responsible for deciding who is the people that will be on the disciplinary committee?
Who decides on the disciplinary committee?
Yeah, the personnel.
Well, the independent anti-doping disciplinary panel are all appointed by the minister. JADCO has absolutely
it has nothing to do with JADCO.
No. We have no say in who sits on the panel.
Yes.
More so how they are appointed to the panel.
All right. Did JADCO suggest that John Campbell should get the maximum penalty for this indiscretion?
We didn't suggest that.
All they did was
put the evidence before the IADP, and then the IADP comes to decision as to the appropriate penalty.
All right. Based on your experience, what do you think was the main reason for them to come to that conclusion that John Campbell should be banned for 4 years, the maximum penalty?
Well, if I'm to interpret the decision, right, it would appear that they must have concluded that his conduct was intentional. That seems to be it. That given the admission as to what he said and the lack of proof of being disoriented in all the circumstances, they must have come to that view.
In your experience, because let me just tell the listeners who don't know, you're a lawyer as well, and you've been a lawyer for how many years?
32 years now.
All right, wonderful. Do you believe that the fact that they thought it was intentional and he wanted to miss the drug test and they don't buy his story, you think that played a part in them thinking that maybe John was being a little bit dishonest, and that played a part in them giving him the full maximum suspension that was possible?
Well, you see, your word is dishonest. I don't know if I can go so far as to use that
You
word.
use the word that you
But,
want to use.
well, as I said before,
Mm-hmm.
they may have felt that maybe some recklessness, maybe,
Yes.
in his conduct, and that there's no ameliorating way in which to look at his conduct, and felt that they couldn't fall within any of those categories set out in the rules in order to mitigate the sentence, because the band is between 2 years and 4 years. The minimum is 2, the maximum is 4.
Also, the minimum for this indiscretion is actually 2 years.
That's right.
So 2 years was automatic.
Yeah, he would have.
At
the
least.
exposure was a minimum of 2 years.
Oh,
All right.
this is interesting now.
Yeah.
So 1 year was impossible.
No, 1 year was impossible, given the particular anti-doping rule violation.
Were you surprised that he got the maximum 4 years?
Well, to be frank with you, I hadn't paid close attention to the matter prior to the decision, But put it this way, having read the decision, I can see where the panel felt it necessary to impose the maximum.
Let us make it clear, because this was a bone of contention earlier on today. You're saying a public warning or anything of the sort could not have survived. That is not a part of the rule. The rule is 2 years or 4.
Yeah, the minimum is, let me just look here. That's right. They said the period of ineligibility is 4 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the athlete can establish that the commission of the anti-doping rule violation was not intentional, the period of ineligibility shall be 2 years, right?
Yeah.
In all other cases, the athlete or other person can establish exceptional circumstances that justify a reduction of the period of ineligibility. The period of ineligibility shall be in a range from 2 years to 4 years, depending on the athlete or other person's degree or fault. So wherever you look at it, whichever category you fall under, the minimum is 2 years.
Wow. This now is painting a different picture of the situation. All right, there were talks about a little bit of hostility when the officers, the doping control officers, went to Mr. Campbell's home. Did they relay that to you?
Well, not to me,
but
because I haven't spoke to directly with any of these with the doping control officer or anything. I'm just going off the report.
Yes.
But I don't know if I can make a judgment as to whether or not there was hostility or otherwise from reading the text of the judgment.
Interesting. Why? I'm now confused as to why would Mr. Campbell take such a risk if he should be aware of the rules. And you said the Jamaican athletes are well educated, and you ensure that that's the case. I'm flabbergasted. No, my boy. What about an argument? Although you're not the one.
For what it is worth, he said in his witness statement that he was not aware that that was possible, that they could test outside the period. That's what he said. But he did admit that he was told by the person at the door, even if you don't know who it is, he was told by the person at the door, who seemed to be knowledgeable, that we can test outside the period. And that is why I said what I said originally.
Yes.
It appears as if he took a gamble.
Was he asked in the hearing if he was convinced that these were JADCO officials?
I don't know if he was so asked. I don't know what questions were asked.
Because that is important, because if somebody is at your door and telling that you can be tested, you're not sure if it's JADCO people, then it nullifies the situation. So he would have to agree then he believed that these were JADCO people, and he was told that you can be tested outside, and he still refused. You follow me?
I suppose in a circumstance like that, what would be the reasonable conclusion?
Yes.
Somebody is at the door claiming to be JADCO, blah, 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 what have you, so knowledgeable and saying certain things. What is the reasonable conclusion you would take? What would be the reasonable conclusion of a person?
Yes. All right. Experienced life for 30 years. You think he will appeal, and if he appeal, you think your decision of the tribunal will be held up?
What my 32 years of experience tells me is that the course of litigation is not always predictable. Right? So the decision as to an appeal, of course, rests with the athlete.
Yes.
And the chances of success one way or the other, I can't analyze in any detailed fashion. All I can say is, from my reading of the decision, I can see why the tribunal came to the decision that it did.
All right. Well, interesting, my boss. Very interesting. It's a tough one, and he will. All right. A question. Do they consider your age and that your career might end based on the length of the ban? Do they consider all these things when they're gonna come down on which sort of punishment that will give you?
It is not one of those. Those considerations do not appear in the rules. They don't appear in the rules.
And the disciplinary committee follow the book in terms of what the rules allow in terms of the punishment, strictly.
Indeed.
Interesting. It's a tough one. Personally, can I ask you, are you disappointed in Mr. Campbell? Can I ask you that?
Yes. Just to say it bluntly, yes, I am. You know, I mean, I've tried to put myself in the position of as another professional, right? I mean, he must have had at the very least a doubt. At the very least, he must have had a doubt. Let us give him that. All right?
Yes.
How do you resolve that doubt? What steps do you take? You don't be careful in your career, man.
Yes. Could they have
say, all right, if it's not JADCO is not this, then we can complain and make the whatever afterwards.
Yes.
Or if they not do it right, I raise a complaint or raise an objection, which, by the way, you're allowed to do during the process, sampling process.
Could they have Could they have considered him being a first-time offender?
Sadly, that isn't in the rules either.
Oh.
Okay? Not this particular rule.
So, question then. What could have allowed them to give him 2 years as opposed to the maximum 4 years? Because they say between 2 and 4 based on the rule that was broken.
Okay.
Give me a situation where it could have been 2 and not 4.
Commission of the anti-doping rule violation was not intentional. All right? Can get 2 years for that. So some other exceptional certain circumstances, and I suspect maybe medical or other reasons, you know, those are the things that you can put forward.
Yes. So you're pretty much saying once they believe that you avoided testing intentionally, it's highly likely that it will be 4 years.
So intentional means you deliberately take a decision not to be tested. In other words, when say, then I'm not here, when he's obviously there, that can be interpreted to mean taking a deliberate decision not to be tested.
Let's repeat for the listeners, if you're joining us, he admitted to saying that in the hearing.
Yes. From what I gather from his witness statement.
Oh, Lord. Ah, boy. All right. Mr. Alexander Williams, you want to add anything before you leave us?
You know, my heart is full because, quite frankly, I thought we were beyond this point. I don't know what else JADCO is supposed to do to educate athletes about their responsibilities and the rules and responsibilities when it comes to testing. Right? We say it over and over again. I thought we were beyond this point.
Yes.
The whole culture, the whole basis of testing internationally is random, you know. If you stop and think about it, testing don't make sense unless you do it by surprise or random.
Yes.
Don't make sense otherwise. That's the general position. The only reason why you do whereabouts filing is so that you will have occasion when you want to know that the athletes are available to do the testing.
Mm-hmm.
That cannot take away from the overarching position.
All right.
Don't it?
Yes. Yeah, man, most definitely.
So I am disappointed.
Because if the police is going to search and try and find gunmen, they're not going to tell them. They don't want them to know that they're coming.
Thank you.
The best way to find guns is when they're not anticipating that you will be there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there may be occasions in which they can say to you, oh, you know, we're coming by the house on Saturday night to have a discussion with you. You might suit them to do that.
Yes. All right, Mr. Alexander Williams, thanks for joining us on the Scoreboard Boss. It was very informative, and we appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man, you cleared up a lot for us. All right, so that was Mr. Alexander Williams, chairman of JADCO. Interesting, very interesting what the man said, people. Now you form your own conclusions.